All right, so we are recording. I'll go ahead and cover the agenda. So as you know, Brightspace is our learning management system, and Read and Write is our district literacy support tool. So in our session today, we're really going to be thinking out about kind of three things: the technology, what tools and features are available for all students, the content, how can teachers design accessible lessons in Brightspace, and then strategies for students. How can students then use the tools in Read and Write for more personalized learning? And again, we'll share out our one pager with you at the end. So I will go ahead and start. I'm going to jump right into Brightspace. Kind of as you see on your screen, we're starting by looking at HTML documents. All right, so while my sandbox is loading, almost there. All right, so I think one of the most common bits of feedback that we get regarding Brightspace is that it is a lot of clicks for both teachers and students. So one way that I found to kind of really build a cohesive lesson in one place in Brightspace is using those HTML documents. So they help to reduce the number of items you're posting to a class per lesson. They also provide consistency and less clicks for students. So if you have not used an HTML document before, once you determine the unit that you want to build your HTML document in, you are going to create new, and it's HTML doc. Sounds a lot fancier than what it is. Your HTML document is really just a blank page, but there's so much that you can build into it. And the purpose of our lesson today is how can we make what we put into our HTML document accessible? So I do want to start by pointing out we have these great templates that have already been designed with screen readers in mind. So if you do have students that are using screen readers as they are reading from this template, it would have a natural flow to it. There are some barriers that we'll get into in just a little bit, where if you do have students that are using screen readers, certain ways that you design your content may not sound correctly. So again, from our HTML document and select template, we have tons of options here. I won't go into all of them, just really want to point out to you that they are there. So for example, AACPS General is one that we created in-house, and really just a place for you to collect your resources, your lesson materials for the day. And again, it kind of provides that consistency for students. So a great look at that. However, I am going to jump into a draft that I have started and kind of show you from scratch. If you weren't using one of those templates, how can you design your HTML document with accessibility in mind? So I have a draft started here, and I know we want to make things look nice. We want our content to be visually appealing for students, but sometimes that can pose a barrier. So right now, my HTML document is probably not the most accessible lesson that I could share out with my students. And one of my go-to tools when I'm designing my HTML documents is the accessibility checker. And this accessibility checker is available anywhere you see the Brightspace editor. And it's this eyeball with this check mark. It takes all of 10 seconds to use and really just helps you be mindful of, is your content going to be accessible to all of your students? It won't catch everything. It's not perfect, but it's a really great starting point. And it's looking for things like headings, color contrast, alt text, and lists, believe it or not, is one thing that it'll look for as well. So again, my accessibility checker is that eyeball with the check mark. And once I select it, let me zoom in. I can see that's really small. It's not only going to identify barriers within my HTML document, but for a lot of the things, it's also going to help me repair it. So for example, I'm going to pop back out for a second. When I'm designing things, I love to center my text. I love to have fun colors. But if I use my accessibility checker, I'm already learning that it's helpful to have things identified as headings because if students are using screen readers, it's going to help identify that relationship between heading versus paragraph text. So I'm able to use my accessibility checker and make that adjustment right there. Like I said, it's also looking for things like color contrast. And if you select the question mark, it'll also help inform you of why this color contrast is not accessible. So to fix this one, I'm actually going to show you another feature within our HTML documents, and that is just built into the color selector itself. So in that color selector, it has that color contrast ratio already determined for you. So you don't have to guess what is a good color contrast to use. That is there for you. So I was on, I believe, one of these lighter shades of green. And it will identify the color contrast for you, both if the text is small, if it's in the paragraph, or if it's the large text, if it's one of your headers. So I can see right off the bat that this shade of green is not going to be the best choice for maybe students that have a visual impairment. And as you change your color, it's going to, again, continue identifying those colors so you can choose one that meets that color contrast criteria. Anywhere with the check mark, good, which makes sense if we get into those lighter shades, those are going to be ones that fail that color contrast ratio. If I go back into my accessibility checker, so one of the things that I had also briefly mentioned is lists. I simply typed in my numbers. So if a screen reader were to go through, it would not detect the sequence or the order. So that would be, instead of just typing that in, that's where I would really want to go in and make sure that I'm using my numbered list tool to make it more identifiable. All right, I just threw a lot out, so I'm going to pause for a second and check the chat. Okay, so far we've covered the templates with accessibility, the accessibility checker, and our color contrast. But there are other things that we can do too that not only support accessibility, but also engagement for our students. So as you can see in my template, I started to build this vocabulary, which if I had used that list, would have been perfectly fine. But it's not necessarily the most eye-catching or engaging for my students. So one alternative that I really like for building out vocabulary within an HTML document is using Creator Plus. Has anybody had experience with Creator Plus? It's newer, but it's been around a little bit. Leslie has raised her hand. Yes. Jillian, no. Okay. So for some of you, this will be new. For some, just a good refresher. But it is one of my favorite tools in Brightspace to use. So again, nothing wrong with my vocabulary list as is. But if I really want to call out my attention for my vocabulary, I'm just going to move this text down a little bit. Creator Plus is, it's really an engagement tool. So there will be what's called elements, and those are really used to chunk or organize your information. And then the flip side of that is there's also Creator Plus practices. Those are more for student-facing questioning types. So I'll show you a little bit about both. And again, these are only in our HTML documents. So staying in the same HTML document, I'm really building out my one-stop shop lesson, and I want to bring attention to my lesson vocabulary. I'm going to go into this plus sign for other insert options, and I'm going to scroll down on my list until I see practice and element. Those are the two Creator Plus features aside from media library, which I'll show later. And I'm going to select element, and I want to call out my vocabulary. I want it to be front and center in my HTML doc. So I'm going to select the call out, which is really just a stylized box where I can have these listed. And then there are some formatting options depending on the element that you're using. So question mark, question, we'll put a question mark next to it if you want to call out a question. Attention is like an exclamation point. So that's if there's, really maybe there's a big update or warning or something that you need to preface for students, that's there. And then jumbo just really makes your vocabulary nice and large for students. So I'm going to try out jumbo, and I'm going to title my call out vocabulary. And I'm just going to briefly list out some of my vocabulary words. So sustainable, and you can put the definitions. Impact was one of them. And then what's great about these Creator Plus, both the elements and the practices, is they are very guided to create. So you would not be able to continue if you were missing something in your call out to make it function correctly. So I can preview this to see what it would look like before I insert. I could go back and make any changes if I wanted to, or if I'm happy with it, I can go ahead and insert it directly into my HTML document. And you can just see that this is a little bit more eye-catching, a little bit more engaging for students, aside from just your traditional list. So that's the call out. One other thing that we're going to get into a little bit as Janine models the read and write aspect for students is I'm going to go down just a little bit more. Text. So I kind of mentioned earlier that Brightspace can have a lot of clicks, and one way that we can reduce the amount of clicks from the student perspective is by building into these HTML documents. So for example, if there is a long text, you do not want students to have access to all of the text at one time. Creator Plus is another great way to organize that text information. So right now I just have a long body of text here, not super engaging for my students. I can make this a little bit more organized for students by creating another Creator Plus. So from my other insert options, going back into my element, again, elements are really great for chunking and organization. My favorites, I really like the accordion, and a lot of the names sound like what they are. An accordion is a drop down of information. Tabs, those really look like note cards with little headers across the top as well. So depending on the purpose of the information, you can choose the appropriate Creator Plus element. Flip cards, a lot like flashcards. And again, all of these, you can use things like images, videos. You can really make these a powerhouse resource for your students. Okay, hotspot is really fun. If you've seen a hotspot in any other applications, it functions the same way. Carousel is a collection of resources. So a lot of options to choose from and play with. You can't hurt them. You saw that you get the preview before you insert it. Really engaging for students. And Jillian, I saw you put a question in the chat. Can teachers make those templates? So these are guided. So yes, the teacher would be creating them. And then Darren is our LMS specialist. We are always available to help if there's something you're not sure of how to make, how to get it into your HTML document. We are more than happy to help you build those out. All right, so again, I'm looking for a way to chunk my text for these. I really like accordion and tabs. So I'm gonna go ahead and play around with accordion. Again, this is probably my favorite one to use. And with the accordion, you have unnumbered and numbered option. That's just really depending on if what you're putting in is important based on sequence. So I think in science, it would be helpful to have numbered if you are trying to chunk the steps of an experiment or even a research project. If you wanted to break it down and show the order of that project, could be another great way to use this as well. So in my accordion, again, I can add my title here. So we are looking at human impacts on the environment. And this is where I can start building out my text. And I'll just do a few just so you get the idea. I do have kind of a visual of what a full lesson could look like in an HTML document. So I'll go to that in a minute. Let's see, negative impacts. And we'll just see what this looks like. While I'm in this accordion too, you'll notice again, this Brightspace editor, there are pretty standard things you can do anywhere you see this Brightspace editor, including inserting videos, images. If there are any math folks out there, there is an equation editor. So really take advantage of what is in your Brightspace editor. For now, I'm going to keep this pretty basic, just going to have my text so we can see what that looks like. So once I select preview, I have my information nicely organized. It really helps showing relationships between content. And then also, again, that chunking. So if it's overwhelming for students to see an entire body of text, which would be for me too, I can focus on one step at a time. And then I can insert that into my document. And I'm going to take this out for now, just so we can see kind of what, sorry, too much scrolling, what that finished product looks like. So I didn't make all the changes. I am going to show you guys kind of a more fleshed out example in just a second. But in the meantime, any questions kind of on those Creator Plus elements, the accessibility checker?
So I have a question.
Sure.
For the click and reveal, because I'm just thinking about for elementary, for adding like math facts or something like that. Can you add more than one as you're doing it? Like, because I see like when I'm trying to add one, it only has one card there. Do I have to like continue to add cards to do different clicks and reveals?
Sure. For click and reveal, yes, you can add, sorry, oops. You can add multiple, but those would have to be separate elements. There are some that you can customize the amount, like flip cards. You can put a bunch of cards in there. Accordion, you can have a bunch of drop downs. But click and reveal, that really is one thing that you're calling attention to. And I actually have an example of what that looks like. But within an HTML document, you can do multiple Creator Plus elements, multiple practices. You can build this out with as many of those as you want.
Thank you.
So the click and reveal, I actually have one of those. I'm glad you mentioned that in kind of my finalized lesson here. For those of you that wanted to see it, I'm just going to make this big. Click and reveal. Again, the name kind of tells you what it is. So it's kind of a little bit of a teaser. So I like this as a way to embed videos without taking up all of the screen space, or just kind of for bonus resources, things that students may not necessarily need, but a good addition to the content. Click and reveal, you have a little button where you can tease out, like this one says learn more, and it will reveal additional information. So that's a really great one to include videos or images or things like that as well. All right, so I think at this point, I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to let Janine take over and demo, okay, I have this lesson built out. Now, what can a student do with Read and Write in this lesson? And this one's a really packed lesson, so I definitely know maybe not every lesson would be to this extent, but it does showcase a lot of those Creator Plus elements and practices, along with following those accessibility guidelines. So this one utilizes the headings. It has our chunked information with our tabs and our vocabulary called out with the call out. All right, I will stop sharing, and Janine, I will pass it over to you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so today I'm going to cover with you guys just a quick review of the Read and Write toolbar and talk about what each of the tools on the Read and Write toolbar does. And then, as Morgan said, show you what that looks like for a student using it within Brightspace. So just as a refresher, if you aren't familiar with how to turn on your Read and Write toolbar, everybody should have in your extension toolbar this little purple puzzle piece with the R and W on it. And when you click it, it brings up your Read and Write toolbar. If for some reason either you or your students don't have the Read and Write toolbar pinned up there, you can usually find it by clicking on the little gray puzzle piece and clicking there to see all the extensions that are available. And then you can pin it to your toolbar there. And then if for on some random chance, if it's not either of those places, you can open up the Google Chrome Web Store and install it from the web store, but it should be pushed to all teachers and all students' Google accounts. So as long as you're signed into Google, you should be able to access it in your extension toolbar. So this is the Read and Write toolbar. And just as a reminder, it is our literacy support toolbar that is available to all students within Anne Arundel County and teachers as well. So if for some reason you find the tools helpful to use, you are also welcome to use the tools. You have access to the same toolbar. But I'll review each of the tools from left to right, just as a reminder for what they are. And this is what the toolbar looks like when you're using it on a website. Sometimes the tools are different if you're working in Google Slides versus in Google Docs, or working on a website versus working within like an extension like Google Docs. Some of the tools are a little bit different, but this is what it looks like when we're working within Brightspace. And if you have sat through a Read and Write training before and you're like, oh, I know all of this already, there are a few different features that were new over the summer that I am going to cover as well. The first tool is that looks kind of like a crystal ball, is word prediction. So when you turn on word prediction, the student will get a list of words that it's trying to predict for them. Word prediction does have a predict ahead feature. So it is trying to guess like the next logical word after the word that you typed. So if you typed Abraham, chances are very high that the word Lincoln is going to come up in as the next word, because it is trying to predict ahead. That is a feature that isn't available for testing though. Hover speech allows you to just hover. If you turn on the tool, you can hover over a word and it will start reading and provide that text to speech from like just hovering over versus having to highlight and decide what you want to have it read. It just starts reading whenever you hover over the text. The dictionary tool allows you to like highlight a tool or highlight a word. And if you aren't sure what that word means, then it will provide the definition. And these are play buttons. So you can listen to the word, and you're also able to listen to the definition if you need to. The picture dictionary, it just provides a picture definition. If you have, for some reason, the student who benefits from that picture support, provides a picture as well. The play, pause, and stop buttons are your text to speech. So that allows a student to highlight what they want read, hit play, and it will start providing that text to speech. When it is providing text to speech, it does provide the double highlighting. So the sentence being read is highlighted in yellow, and then the individual word being highlighted is in the individual word being read is highlighted in blue. And then when you hit the stop or the pause button, it holds your place, and you can hit play and it will start reading the next word. But if you do hit the stop button, it kind of clears all of that out. The screenshot reader allows for reading inaccessible text. So if you have text that's contained within an image and a student needs text-to-speech, the standard text-to-speech features will not work for reading that text. There's an example of that in this lesson that I saw earlier. I think it was here. Like this image has inaccessible text. Like the student can't highlight and have that read, but they can turn on the screenshot reader and draw a box around the text that they need read. And then it will start. It takes a couple seconds to process the text that's within the image, but then it will start reading the text. Students are also able to copy the text that's within the inaccessible image if they need to. They can copy and paste it elsewhere. The screen masking tool allows a student to, if they need like small bits of information at a time to focus on, if they need to focus their attention on like a small bit of text, that box does that for you. Text to speech, which I'll cover like directly using it within Brightspace in a few minutes, but that allows a student to use their voice for typing. The translate button provides single word translation. So if you have a student who English is not their first language and they need that single word translation, they can highlight a word, hit the translate button, and it will provide the translation. It defaults to Spanish, but you can change the language to basically any language, but the default is to Spanish. We'll cover the highlighters in a few minutes and how students can use those, but those are just your standard highlighters, but there are a few extra features with Read and Write as far as allowing the student to like extract the information that they highlight into another document. So really the highlight tools, the sweep highlights, collect highlights, and the vocab kind of all operate within using the highlighters. The simplified page tool, I'm not going to show you guys today because it doesn't really mesh well with Brightspace. But if you're on a website that you needed to remove images or ads, you can click that and it will remove, and it will just leave you with like a text-based document where the student can just have the text on the website instead of all the ads and other links and things like that. Rewordify is a new tool as of this summer. I don't know if you guys are like aware of Rewordify, but basically what it does is it changes the readability of text within a website. So you can, in the settings, you can set whether you want maximum words or minimum or just your average amount of words rewordified, but it basically makes difficult text more readable. So if I turn on Rewordify on here, everywhere that you see that the text just went into italics, that's a definition or something that's been rewordified to make it more readable for the students. So if I turn it back off, you can see again what the text looked like before and what it looks like after it's been rewordified to just help with the readability. And then this tool is Practice Read Aloud. And again, that's not really a tool that meshes well with using it within Brightspace. But if you were on a website that you wanted to create like a reading fluency activity for a student, it could take an article and remove all of the images and all the ads. And then it allows a student to access to the reading features of Read and Write to practice their reading fluency. And I encourage you to experiment with that tool yourself if you have a student that you feel like could benefit from some reading fluency support. Some tools that are some things to know about the tools within Read and Write that kind of changed over the summer. If you have to make customizations to some of the settings to make the tools more accessible for your students, you can click the three dots here on the end of the toolbar. And I just want to cover a couple of the settings. So the settings for speech, a lot of times 50 is too fast for students who need time to process the text. So we typically recommend changing the speed to between 25 and 30 to slow down the rate of speech to help students who need that time processing and comprehending. For word prediction, it doesn't default. It did last year. It doesn't this year. It doesn't default to read prediction suggestions upon hovering. So for everybody, that is automatically turned off. If you have a student who needs that turned on, when they hover over the word in word prediction, it will read the word out loud to them. And then the other feature that is new for spell check, this is the first year when the spell check, you've been able to hover over the words within spell check to listen to them as well. In years past, it's always been a little frustrating to me. If you have a student who struggles with spelling, if you turn on spell check, it doesn't really help them know which word is the correct word if they struggle with spelling. So this allows them to be able to hover over the words in spell check so they can pick the correct word. But that, again, doesn't default to being turned on. So you do have to go ahead and turn that on for students. And then for Rewordify, because that is a new feature, this is where you can, it defaults to just the default setting for words to be rewordified. And you can decide if you want minimum rewordifying level. So that would be not very many words get rewordified, and then maximum provides the maximum amount of words to be rewordified. So that's really the main features. Oh, and then the other thing is if you have a student who, for some reason, this is too many features, or there are features that they can't handle using, or it's just overwhelming to look at all of the features, you can toggle on and off various features within the toolbar if you need to. We encourage students who can handle it to have all of the features available, but we do have like younger students or some students who are just overwhelmed by the amount of tools, so you can toggle this on and off. Okay, so now I will cover like what it looks like for a student within a Brightspace lesson, some of the tools that they could use. So for this lesson within Brightspace, the lesson actually has read and write usage embedded within it. So the directions are for highlighting and reading information. Use read and write to highlight the text. So we're highlighting our positive impacts in yellow and our negative impacts in green. So when we do that within the lesson, I'm just going to highlight a few things in my yellow and green. When I have those facts highlighted, that if I went through and found all of them, I just did 2 so I can show you how it works. And I have all of the information that was required in the assignment that I wanted to share with my teacher. You can collect all the highlights. And so you click the collect highlights button, and it will take all the information that you've highlighted and move it into a separate Google Doc. So now the student has their assignment completed, the positive impacts, the negative impacts, and kind of all collected into one place, and then they could turn this assignment in. Or if for some reason they needed to like practice using quotation marks or summarizing the information, that's all there. They can also, as a teacher, if you were doing this outside of Brightspace or anywhere else, it links back to their where they got their information. So they have their source right there. If they want to clear out the highlights so that they're not there anymore, you just select the highlighted material and then you sweep the highlights away. And then, sweep away on the website as well. Another tool that I wanted to show you guys is what it looks like for using the word prediction and talk and type within Brightspace as well. So for that, we have this little writing discussion board that I can open up. So the prompt for this would be, if you could learn more about any subject, what would it be? And why are you curious about the subject? So if I want to start a new thread, each time you do open up a new tab within a website, you do have to turn the read and write toolbar back on. It doesn't carry over. It's just one of the quirks of using it on a website. So I do have to go back up to that purple puzzle piece. But now I have access to my tools as well. And I can use the word prediction and speech to text within Brightspace. So I can click on the word prediction and it will pop up. You can customize in the settings. You can customize how many words show up in your word prediction. It defaults to 10. Sometimes it's too many for a lot of students. So we say start with 5, and you can change the size of the text as well. But if I were to start typing, as you hit the space bar, it will start trying to predict ahead. So I'm just going to hit W. I can hover over and it's reading the text to me. And then I can just click the words in the word prediction. If I wanted to use it down here in the box where I can actually do the writing, it works there as well. It should work. It just worked a second ago. Let me see. Sometimes you'll run into like little time delays, or sometimes I have to start typing and then it will start. Yeah, there you go. It starts to pop up. So that's how the word prediction works. If I want to use talk and type, which is my speech to text, so using my voice for typing, I just have to turn on the headset. I want to learn more about monarch butterflies migrating to Mexico. Period. So you can use the speech to text to type what you want to say, and then it does recognize if you say the punctuation marks, period, exclamation mark, question mark, you can just speak those in. The only one that's a little wonky with is quotation marks. It will just type the word quotation marks. As far as I know, that hasn't been fixed. But that's what it looks like for using talk and type within Brightspace as well. And I think that is everything that I had to cover as far as using read and write within Brightspace. So I'll turn it back over to Morgan, unless there's any questions.
So I think the only one question I think I answered in the chat. Kathy, you asked if the HTML documents can be opened in a new tab. And yes, students can do that. There's the little square with the arrow icon that they can pop out into a new tab and still use read and write. And
does it allow you? I didn't think to check that.
So actually not that one. Sorry, Jenny, the one right to the left of it. No, right back where you were. Here. Yeah.
I see. Yes.
So
okay.
That
So this would allow
in a new tab. Yep.
Yeah, you can use that.
Yeah, those Chromebooks are small. So thank you for asking that, Kathy. All right, Janine, if you stop sharing, I will get into Media Library, which if you haven't checked out Media Library yet, it is a lot of fun and there's so much you can do with it. I'm actually really excited to show you today how you can pair it with your document camera with Sphere 2. It's just really a great combination to record videos. I'm a former middle school math teacher, and so problem solving was a big thing where it's just more helpful if students can hear your voice, see your face, and the content at the same time. So from my sandbox, if you click on your admin tools, it's that little settings gear up in the upper right corner. This is how you would access your media library. So if you've been with us using Brightspace since the beginning, you may be familiar with video notes, which are typically created directly from the content as you're building. Media library is your collection of your audio and video content. So if you have any previous video notes made, they will be stored into your media library. But here you also have the option to upload files and create recordings. And what's great about Media Library is if you are creating directly here, they can be pulled into all of your courses. Your Media Library is user specific. So any video you own in any class you're working in, you would be able to pull a video in using the Insert Stuff button. So again, it's user specific, so you will only see the videos that you have created here. And if you select Create Recording, you have quite a few options here. So we'll let it turn on. So as you can see, I have the option to record just my voice if I do not want to have my camera on. However, I'm a big fan of camera on. I think it helps some students to connect with their teacher, even just seeing the facial expression and, pronunciation as your lips move can be helpful for some learners. So this would just be a standard video. However, what I wanted to be able to show you as well is in the bottom right corner, there is a share screen option. And let me make sure I'm sharing my right thing. Oops. Helps if I open Sphere 2 first. Sorry. So a typical share screen, if you just want to demo a tool that you're using online, you're welcome to do that. So for example, if I wanted to record, maybe I was demoing a virtual manipulative, I could record, I could have my picture down in the bottom right-hand corner, and I can just screen record a website or whatever content I'm doing. Another option is if you have a document camera that you're familiar using Sphere 2 with, you also have the option to record directly to your document camera. So this is kind of a cool feature. Let me share. Let me make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, There we go. All right, so as you can see right now, Brightspace is picking up my document camera, so I am able to record if I were doing an extended word problem. I also have just all the features that are built into your Sphere 2. So if you wanted to mark up here, you have those digital capabilities as well. But important focus of this is it's a great way to share out student notes, or if you know in advance that you are going to be out and you wanted to be able to provide, again, that face-to-face connection, even when you're not there, having that option to have your picture-in-picture recording from your document camera, recording your face and your voice, kind of that full package there. Leslie, I saw you ask if the video can be published to the LoR. You are able to download videos, but I don't think, actually, let's check it out. I don't think you can publish your videos to the LoR. We'll see. Good question. Let's see. Yeah, no option to publish to the LoR there, but like I said, you can download and share that way. Since we are talking about accessibility, one additional great thing about Media Library, outside of being able to build it in one place, is you are also able to add captions. So this is a video that I had already done. I can go into edit. So it will only auto caption the language that you are speaking. So it won't translate, but you do have the ability to add your own captions, or like I said, it will auto generate based on the language that you are speaking in the video. We have kind of played around with this. If you did want to provide an additional set of captions, so if you wanted students to have the option to, say, access the captions in English or Spanish, you could upload your own captions as well, and they could toggle between the two, but that would be teacher-driven. Auto-generate, again, only for the language that you are speaking. It's a very simple video editor, which for me kind of works out well. So you can add captions here as well. So if I were talking about problem solving, first step, you just type your captions in the box and add it. There's also, again, some very basic tools where you can mark and cut your video. Very simple video editing, but gets the job done. And like I said, once you have your content recorded here, you can say go back into, so I'm just going to finish this. I can go back to the human impact lesson that we were working on earlier if this were relevant content. So I'm going to go back to that lesson. And the HTML documents are very quick to do edits along the way. So I know if this were a lesson that I were teaching, I would like to have maybe a placeholder for a video. And then once the lesson is completed, I like to go back and add my content to that placeholder. All right, so I'm going to my lesson that we taught for the day. Once the lesson is all done, if I wanted to go back and add my relevant video that we did today, again, anywhere you see insert stuff, that's your play, pause, stop. So let me scroll all the way to the bottom. Let's say I had a spot here for resources. I can put in my lesson video here. We are going to insert, sorry, I didn't need to highlight it, the habit. And again, video note, that's if you're making on the fly. Media library, if it's already been recorded. So you have to search for the video that you want to put in. And I can insert my video here. Oops. Doesn't help if you accidentally delete it. There we go. And so your media library, like I said, anywhere you see that insert stuff video. So you could put a video into an announcement. You could put videos into discussions. You can put video into your HTML documents. Leslie, looking at your question, students can change the language as the video plays. So it won't change the video, or I'm sorry, it won't change the language as it plays, only if you uploaded a second set of captions, but that would be more teacher driven. It doesn't have the option to translate at this time. Okay. So kind of going back full circle, I know Janine had shown the discussions. I love to let students record in discussions as well. Students do have access to media library, so that just adds on an additional option for your students who are using discussions. Providing them the option to use read and write, to use speech to text or word prediction, or give them the option to record their own video, put that in. It's a really great way to give student choice. Kind of full circle with designing that accessible content. But as promised, I did create a one-pager that I want to share with everybody that you can take back to your staff and share out. So I'm going to open that up kind of as a quick summary. And if anybody had any questions that we missed, please let me know. So I'm going to put this in the chat. And if my screen decides to load, share here as well. So the one pager, it's not really a step-by-step, it's not a how-to, it's just a snapshot of the possibilities that you can do when designing content in Brightspace and Read and Write. And then we do have information provided that has more of those tutorials, more of those how-tos on Teacher Intro to Digital Tools and Read and Write. So both of those sites are accessible through ClassLink. If you haven't taken a look at Teacher Intro in a while, or if you've never seen it, I definitely recommend going there. We kind of worked hard to update that over the summer. And I can put the link to our Brightspace area in the chat for that as well. And if you've made it onto Teacher Intro, again, a lot of great resources here. I do want to point out what I put in the chat was our Brightspace section. So when you're thinking about your HTML docs, that's really going to be found in your content. Media library will be there as well. So we do have some resources here on our audio and video. There's media library directions here. And right next to it, Creator Plus and HTML documents. Again, those step-by-step tutorials, videos are there for you. When we're thinking about designing from our accessible lens, under application support, we do have additional resources for accessibility there. So we have information on teaching with captions, the Microsoft Immersive Reader, as well as our dedicated page to Read and Write. So if you lose that link in the chat to the one pager, it is here as well on this Read and Write page. All right, so before we go, if anybody has questions, I'm going to grab the link for attendance. But again, I'll be looking at the chat for any questions. Jillian, yes, there will be a recording of this session that will be shared out. So I think Carrie mentioned it at the beginning. That session catalog that you used to access all of the meet links today, I would say probably Monday, where those meet links were, you will instead see the recording link. along with any presentation materials. So in that session catalog, you will see that I have provided that one pager there. Really didn't use my slides a whole lot. It's really just my intro, but it's there if you need it, along with my contact information, Janine's contact information. And so the last thing I'll kind of say to you guys as you're filling out your attendance form is please invite me out to your school. You know, I'd love to come talk designing accessible content to you, your school, your content team. Love to come out. So that's it. Thank you guys for joining. The attendance is in the chat. I'll put it in there one more time, and I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.